John Darley is the Warren Professor of Psychology at Princeton University, where he joined the faculty in 1968. You will be glad to know that he once spent time at Harvard, getting his master's and PhD here. As you can see from your program, he's won a lot of awards and was president of the American Psychological Society. He's written too many articles to count. Professor Darley's early work centered on the phenomenon that we see when people in an urban setting or a large group fail to help, as in the famous Kitty Genovese murder. His research with Bibb Latané led to the theories of diffusion of responsibility and pluralistic ignorance to explain why the presence of more bystanders might make people less likely to help at the scene of an emergency. More recently, he has turned to studying punishment in the criminal law. He has found that although most people think about punishment in terms of what the criminal deserves, the just desert theory, as a society we still cling to the idea that punishment is supposed to deter. In a recent article with Paul Robinson in the Georgetown Law Review, Professor Darley attacks the deterrence theory of punishment, arguing that while the overall system may deter some criminals, attempting to optimize deterrence will prove futile and may actually lead to increased crime. He writes, "There is reason to think that potential offenders do not know the law, do not make rational choices, and/or do not perceive an expected cost for a violation that outweighs the expected gain. Deterrence-based law may produce crime because the gap between what we expect the law to be, just desert, and what it actually is undermines the moral authority of the law." And now it is a great honor to introduce Professor John Darley.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about justice as intuitions. Intuitions is a word that carries quite a lot of baggage for judgment and decision-making people at the moment. So I am going to start by giving you a sense of what I mean, a teachable moment, giving you a sense of what I mean by intuitions. Begin here. This is our stereotype about thinking and how it goes. We tend to think we have two systems. We understand there's a perceptual system and there's a reasoning system, and they are really quite different from one another. But solve this problem. Sorry about the noise. Okay, here's the problem. How much does the ball cost in this case? Okay, quickly, solve the problem. Okay, if your answer is 10 cents and $1, raise your hand. Come on, you liars, raise your hand. Okay, good, thank you. 10 cents. 10 cents is the answer that pops into the mind, if you like. It is an intuitive product in my terms. It's not a thought-through product. You didn't figure, it just arrived. And the intuitive system supplies, by the way, that's the wrong answer, 10 cents, because 10 cents is about right. It divides naturally into $1.10, and it's the right order of magnitude. Okay? That was an intuitive decision. The answer is 5 cents. Okay. I failed to say that once, and everybody looked disturbed for the entire rest of the time. So that's an intuitive product. Many things with many heuristics, many biases are intuitive products. So we have an intuitive system, and what I want you to notice is the intuitive system has the process properties of our perceptual system. We just see what's there, we just intuit what's right. The intuitive system is fast, works in parallel, it's not interfered with while you're thinking about other things. It goes on in the background. It's apparently effortless. You don't perceive it in motion. But it gives you products of decisions, like the reasoning system. So we really have three systems as follows. And the intuitive system is quite important in what I'm going to say. Okay. Its products often prevail. That is, people often have intuitions about the right answer, and even if acting on those intuitions is going to be highly consequential, even if you have a faculty member choosing her retirement plan, investment, stocks versus bonds, an intuition arrives, split the difference, and that's the difference that's acted on, all right? The intuitive results are very accessible. That's often why they're acted on. They should be corrected by the reasoning system. They need to be monitored, but you take borrowing a quote from Danny Kahneman, the monitoring is normally quite lax, allowing many wrong intuitive products to stand. Okay? So that's the intuitive system and its role, and it's to say that, kill it, okay? Turn everything off. You can turn the system, why don't you just turn it off? Will that work? You did, okay. Okay, great. All right, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's all we need in the way of audio visuals. So I will now go ahead and explain that justice judgments are intuitive judgments, all right? So when a person gets a description of a crime, a fairly fleshed out description of the crime, rather quickly comes to mind a moral reaction that carries with it a rough idea that this deserves a big punishment, a smaller punishment, okay? So these are the intuitions that comes to mind. And they are automatic, they're not optional, they're there, and they occur without our having to reason toward them. That's the contention, and there's quite a lot of evidence that that is so. I'll give you that in a moment. But second point here is that these judgments are based on a just deserts reaction that people have, in contrast to, let us say, a deterrence reaction. You are not running deterrence calculations in your head. You are having a moral reaction that's a just deserts reaction. You're not thinking about how long this person needs to be incapacitated. Again, you are having a just deserts reaction. There are two kinds of studies that have come to this conclusion. Both are scenario studies. A subject is told a story about a crime that somebody commits, and the task of the subject is to determine what the subject feels is the appropriate sentence for that transgression. And the subject then, in a policy capturing study, you do it thusly. There's the scenario, Joe has embezzled $10,000, all right? And the scenario for one subject says he did that in order to pay for an operation for a child. Another subject receives he did that to continue a life of debauchery. That's a manipulation of the just deserts perceptions. Joe has done something like that before, right? Or he has never done anything like that before. That's about his likelihood of recidivation, and therefore that's an incapacitative bit of information. Right? To make a long story quite short, the information that makes a difference to the sentences assigned are the bits of just deserts information. The information that makes relatively little difference is things relevant to deterrence, and incapacitation makes a difference in a way that I'll now show you. Process tracing is the second kind of experiment. The experiment is very like the first, except it is now the task of the subjects to acquire information, a bit at a time, and to stop when she has enough information to decide the sentence. And so the subject, think of the subject as turning over 3x5 cards on a table in front of them. This is all achieved computationally, but you can conceive of it as turning 3x5 cards. And a 3x5 card said, why did Joe embezzle? Another one says, has he ever done it before? And you watch the subject acquire information by turning over cards. And the pattern of information acquisition here is first just deserts information. And they acquire several bits of that. They begin to converge on a sentence that they feel they want to give. And once they have that fairly clear in their head, they then do check for incapacitative information, as he'd done it before, and modify a little bit on the basis of that. But we now have two sets of studies in which a just deserts perspective has been the one that drives sentencing behavior. Okay?